Where did your songwriting knack or ability start to come out? Because you've written some interesting scores for films and this sort of thing.
It happened, let's see, I wrote a one-act play.
Okay.
And there was this guy I knew acting in it. Smokey Robards was his name. And Smokey one day called me and he said, "You'll never guess who I'm working with now." "Who?" And he said, "Murray McLeod." And Murray McLeod was a guy that I'd gone to high school with. So, oh great, I wanted to see him. So I went and they had a little office, and they had a music publishing office. And oh yeah, and I hadn't been around the music business at all really, or songwriters. I liked rock and roll like everybody else, and I started hanging around with them. And it was 1964, late in 64. And then the more I hung around, I began writing lyrics, helping them write. And I thought, well, maybe I could write lyrics. And in that period of time, and then I started writing melodies, and, a few chords. Most importantly, I think that period of time, 65, 6, and 7, music, the record industry, the things that were being said by the Beatles, Dylan, Stones, anybody else involved in music, was more important than anything being said in theater or film. I think the most relevant and the most powerful and exciting media of that period was the record industry, so it was a thrill to be involved in it.
Murray tells me that you play a mean accordion.
Yeah. Wrong. mean to the ear. Is what he means. No, I didn't.
And you're kind of he says you're partial to Zydeco music.
Yeah, that I did. I think about 1970, I became infatuated with Clifton Chenier. I went nuts for Zydeco music, and ran out and bought an accordion and took some lessons and learned to play Pop Goes the Weasel. But I discovered that the chord bank on the left hand is a huge amount of chords over there, and sevenths and ninths and fifths, and I could guesswork find a chord or a combination of chords that I would have never been able to put together on a piano. I wouldn't have known where, I wouldn't have had any idea. And I could, and I could start writing songs, and it became for me it worked as an instrument to write songs, because I would suddenly be able to find chords that I thought were tasty, that I wouldn't have known how to play on any other instrument, nor on that instrument, except that that's how it's built,
Yeah. I want to digress away from music for a minute and talk about your television career. And the one thing that you're probably going to go to your grave with being remembered the most is playing Angel on the Rockford Files. And I was amazed to hear that you did 6 shows per season when you were on that, and you had a very loose arrangement with Mr. Gardner, James Gardner, and Cherokee Productions. I was wondering, how did you get away from that, or get away with that?
When they first approached me to do the show, they hadn't. It started as a 2-hour movie for TV, which was kind of a pilot, even though everybody expected it to become a series, written by Steve Cannell. And Mita and Jim and I had lunch, and they said, "We're going to do this, and we'd like you to be involved, and we're trying to figure out what the character would be, but this, that, and the other." And they knew that I wanted to direct and wanted to do theater and other things, and I explained I didn't want to commit to day in and day out series work. I would love to be involved. What would be a happy medium? And it worked out to be 6 shows a year. And it was great because I was never tired of doing it. I mean, I'd go away for a couple of months. I think, in fact, I was talking with Steve Cannell a few weeks ago, and he said, "Do you remember you'd come back into the offices after a couple of months and you go, 'Now, how did I play this?'" Because I would always try to remember what it was that I was doing.
I'm wondering where you got that inspiration or that drive to create such a character.
When I grew up, there were a lot of what they call street characters. That's what they call them, and they're just petty, small-time gamblers. I think the word petty really gives me the best explanation for what I was trying to do with Angel. But these street guys, they were small-time hustlers. Maybe they'd done time. Most of them had in prisons or jails, and they were always hustling. It was like they would sooner spend 3 weeks to hustle $100 when if they just got a job they would have made $300. But they couldn't see that, you know. They could only see, I'm working on a deal. I'm going to make $100 here, and with all the energy, more energy than anybody would need to spend. The nicest thing, or I guess the nice thing, is people all the time used to and still do come up and say, "I know somebody just like Angel. He's one of my best friends." And you'd think, well, why would Angel be your best friend? And yet it was Rockford's one of his friends too.